I kid you not, 60% of our customers that come through for inventory review, 60% of them have 80% of their time at the $15 a level. These are CEOs doing $15 tasks in their business, and they want to know why they have no time, because they're control freaks. Mm-hmm. They're doing the sales estimate, they're doing the phone calls, they're doing the email review.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of the Painter Growth Podcast. I'm here with Kedma Ough today. It's going to be a really exciting conversation. We've been looking forward to this conversation for a number of months now. So yes. I'm just going to introduce you, Kedma. Kedma is a nationally recognized business strategist, a best-selling author, and she's now the Chief Operating Officer of Ninja VA, which is a premier virtual placement company servicing the home service industry. As the COO, she leads recruiting, onboarding, client success, daily operations, and ensuring clients scale efficiently with high-performing remote talent. Before that, too, Kedma was the Senior Director of Coaching at Conquer Coaching. Now I think it's called Home Service.
Now it's House Call Pro.
House Call Pro, and where you worked with a ton of entrepreneurs and leaders.
Yeah.
And as a fifth-generation entrepreneur, you've coached over 10,000 founders, helped unlock more than $100 million in business funding. You are the author of Target Funding, the practical roadmap to accessing grants, loans, and alternative capital. And your expertise has been featured in Entrepreneur and HuffPost. I feel like we could go on and on and on, but I think we're ready to get into it without further ado. So welcome. Excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited.
How's your day going so far?
You know, it's always great. It was Mother's Day. And so I am not the kind of mom that does well with chocolate or flowers or even brunch. So we spent a day whitewater rafting.
Amazing. That sounds fantastic.
Yes.
Well, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Again, stoked to have you on here. We met a few months back, and
yes.
I think our initial conversations went in directions that I didn't know where they were going to go. You didn't really know where they were going to go, but we just felt this alignment to chat.
Yes.
So I think this conversation today is probably going to be a little bit different than you've heard on the Painter Growth Podcast. We're going to let it free flow. We might go in some crazy directions. We'll see how far down the rabbit hole we go. And I'm just excited to have some fun with you today.
Me too.
Speaking of being a mother and Mother's Day, I do want to start with that. I know that that was one of your primary decisions to leave a more comfortable government job and really going into what became House Call Pro coaching with Contractors.
Correct.
What was something we talk a lot about at Painter Growth too, is just having this holistic view and this holistic perspective on what success looks like, and what we always say a millionaire's mindset is so much more than just about the money. It includes health and family and all these other aspects. Just curious, what led you to that decision, and how did that really start this path that you're on now?
Yeah, well, it's actually a really interesting story. Brandon Vaughn, who is the founder of Conquer, and him and I are very close. I was his coach for 7 years. We met through when I was heading up the Small Business Development Center in Oregon. And here's the thing you need to know for people who are listening, who are saying, gosh, you know what? I really want to bring someone in as a core function of my team. And what we seem to think is that we're bringing someone in because they're miserable somewhere else. That's a false statement. That's a false statement. So Brandon came to me, and I was heading up the innovation. He had just, in 3 years, we worked hand in hand. He sold his company, which was a home service company, turned around and said, I have a dream. I want to create this company called Conquer to be the largest coaching company in the home service space. And I want you to head up as VP of coaching. And I said, no. And he's like, okay. He's like, why? I go, well, why would I say yes? Number one, I have a pension. Number two, I'm the head boss. Like, I run the show. Number three, I'm getting paid really well, right? More than, in the government, getting paid six figures is considered great, plus benefits. What could he offer me that I didn't already have? This is a lesson for you. if you want the next A player, know that that next A player is probably in a role that they love.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what could Brandon offer me that was not, was different to what I already had? Because I said to him, I already have a great role. What can you offer me? Then he said the thing that changed my life. He said, what if you can actually work in an environment that gives you the time to actually go to soccer games and watch your kids play?
Hmm.
And at the time, I was driving 45 minutes each way. I had missed so many soccer games. And the minute he said that, I said, okay, yes. Why? Because he was buying an opportunity for me to spend time with my family. And it was actually, after I onboarded, it was probably 3 months later, was actually the very first time I personally got to see a soccer match that my son was in. And that was it. The rest is history.
That's amazing. I think that there's a few things to touch on that I think are so important, which is Brandon could see, he knew you in such an intimate way and a deep level, truly was important to you, that he could see things that you couldn't even see for yourself. And then when he presented that, and it gave you an opportunity to really step into that. And, I think that's, like you said, if you're looking for that next A player in the team, A players have options.
Exactly.
Right.
Options.
Yeah. They have options. They get to choose for the most part what they're going to do.
They get to choose, and they have a good life.
Yeah. And so what is it that you can value and that you can offer that's going to be significantly more than money or hours or anything, but important to that person? Because what's important to you, may be different than what's important to me.
Exactly.
But it can still be within the same company. You just is how you position it and create the opportunity for them, right?
Yes.
So I think that's just
fantastic. So A players. I think what we want autonomy. We want opportunity with family, and we want opportunity to play big and benefit from it. Like if I'm going to build $100 million company, and you want me to build your $100 million company, I have to get a nice piece of that pie. Nice. Like it's not negotiable.
Yeah.
But listen, I'm helping build the $100 million company. What can I say?
Well, I mean, there's that aspect of it too, and you could obviously go do that on your own too. So of course, in the situation there's that aspect of it too, which is, I think, the deeper understanding of that for people to understand is someone like you in your capacity and what you've done in your career is you understand your self-worth.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And if you understand your self-worth, then you can hold that boundary and you hold that line and then it's kind of like end of conversation.
I just had this conversation today with a prominent, actually a national expert in the AI space. She's a female boss, like a boss lady, but she called me this morning because she said, hey, I need to get my ego in check. And she was walking me through a situation where there was, questionable of opportunity for her to do like podcasts and community events. And she's like, the company was thinking about maybe bringing someone else in. And she's like, is this my ego talking? I'm like, no, you have a seat in the table. Sit there. Sit there. So I will tell you this. I am not apologetic for showing up to sit in the seat that I was given.
It's so good. I love it. And I think that when you're somebody, and again, of your nature and your essence and your vibration, it's you also, when you just embody who you are, then people respect it way more.
Exactly. And what I tell people is this: if I take my full aspect of my energy from my seat, it doesn't negate your seat. One of the lessons I learned early on at 4 or 5 years old, I would run around the room, and in my home, I would say to my mom, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful. I really thought that I was only 4 or 5 years old. But my mother said something. She pulled me aside and she goes, it's not nice for you to say that, Kedma. It's not nice for you to say that. And I looked at her with my big brown eyes and I said, Mama, but you could be beautiful too. Just say you're beautiful. And the lesson is that if I call out my worth, it doesn't mean that your worth is less. It just means I'm calling out my worth. But how many times do we get into a position that we have to diminish our own worth or diminish our own light or diminish our own place because someone else feels uncomfortable with it? And so I love our conversation. And I would say that, as long as you're not coming from arrogance or ego, there is a place to own your space and be okay with it.
Yeah. And I think that one question I love to ask people in the more the intuitive coaching work that I do with clients is just ask the question of who are you?
Yeah.
And for people to actually sit with that, and generally I see people, they'll start off and they'll say, well, my name is this and my this, and I'm like, okay, that's all great, and that might be true for your character, but it's all just a story.
So yep.
And you ask the question again of who are you? And one thing that I did back in 2018 was I finished university. I was working for a tech company remotely, living in Colombia, and I was like, man, it was pretty awesome. Like it was an amazing thing, right? But I wasn't fulfilled. And I remember I quit the job. I moved back to my parents' basement, and I looked in the mirror, and when I removed the new job that I had, when I removed my social circle, when I removed all my friends, when I removed everything that I thought made up Jesse externally, and then I asked that question, well, then I started to get to some answers.
And what was the answer?
Well, it took me 6 years to do that.
Are you going to share it?
Yeah. Well, three weeks ago, I was back at my parents' place in that same bathroom when I looked in the mirror, and then I went for a walk in the morning, and I said, when I first asked that question 6 years ago, like I didn't know how to answer it, and I've been meditating, on it, and I was walking around having a coffee the one morning, and I said, who am I? And I am who I am.
Oh.
And that's it.
That's it.
And when you know who you are, you don't need logic. You don't need to justify anything. And it's a feeling. It's just like, I know who I am who I am. And this is who I am.
I love that. It does feel like a Dr. Seuss statement, but I like
a little bit, right?
I love it. Yeah. I love it. But it's so perfect and pure.
It feels more like a feeling, right? Of like, once you feel that, then like you said, you're not apologetic for who you are. And if going back to what you said of owning your space and, having a seat at the table and understanding your self-worth in that realm, when you live in a state of abundance, I can occur this way and you occur this way.
Thank you.
I occur this way doesn't mean you have to occur as anything less or different. It's a very different way of being, right?
And it plays in everything you do. I have a fundamental statement that, first of all, let me just be clear. I have consulted and coached over 30,000 businesses. I don't say that lightly, over 25 years. So what you need to know when you're listening to this is there is pretty much no industry I could go into that I'm not going to compete with someone, right? Because I've been in so many industries. And so one of the statements I always say is, I am not here to compete. I'm here to disrupt the industry. You want to play with me? Let's play. There's a lot to play with. There's a lot of the industry that's broken. There's a lot that has to be fixed. There's a lot for innovation. And again, even in that space where you have a seat at the table, someone comes in your space, and I hear it all the time from pros. Oh my God, I can't believe they came in. They're stealing my leads. No, they're not stealing your leads. They're not stealing your leads. They have a place in the community. You didn't get the lead. The leads weren't like, nobody signed on your birth certificate. Well, Jesse's been born. Now he's been given 10,000 leads. Like, those leads do not belong to you. And instead of having this poverty mindset, how about hanging out with them? Like one of my best friends is one of the top competitors in my area for what we do. I do residential cleaning. My company owns a residential cleaning company. This company owns a residential cleaning company. We go out to dinner. Right. So
what is one thing that's come out of that maybe people wouldn't have expected?
Well, I'll tell you the first thing is when I decided 14 months ago to start my own cleaning company, I knew who were the lead competitors in the space. And one of them was good friends of mine who I know and trust. And so the first thing I did is I had dinner with them. And I said, look, I'm in a little pickle. I want to get into the home service, but every home service I want to do, whether it's painting, whether it's HVAC, whether it's junk removal, I know someone in the industry. And someone inevitably will be like, hey, Kedma, you're coming into my business industry. So I said, I'm thinking about cleaning. And there was a reason for that. That's all about my story. So I sat down with dinner and I said, I won't start the company unless I get your blessing. I felt like I was in the mafia and, I was asking for the daughter in hand. And they said, not only will we give you our blessing, but we would be happy to invest in your company.
Wow.
That's abundance. That's abundance.
That's amazing. To even hear that story, and for, like you said, when I had my painting company and I saw other competitors in the area, I'm like, perfect, more homes are getting painted.
Exactly.
And when someone else sees it, it inspires them to then paint their house, which is just creating, more of the pie for everybody else, right?
Exactly.
So what do you think that, because you've consulted 30,000
Yes, I have.
That mindset shift from scarcity into abundance, I mean, from your perspective, like why do you think that that's where a lot of entrepreneurs are? And then is there a certain point in when you see that shift occur, have you found?
So I would say, if you want to get deep real fast, scarcity comes from trauma. There's somewhere in the back of their mind, something has happened to Craig, because I do not believe that as beautiful babies that are born, I do not believe babies are born with the idea that they have scarcity. I think it's an environmental change. I think it's dynamics. I think it could be cultural, but somewhere in their ecosystem, they develop this scarcity thing. And listen, there's times that, like in my case, I don't have scarcity, but my husband says that I have what does he say? He doesn't say I'm frugal, but he says, uh, let's say I like to get good deals, right? But sometimes the good deals are not, the funny thing my husband says is, when we first got married, I was super excited. I went to Goodwill. I got our first couch. The couch was $25. And my husband's like, I swear it looks like someone died on this couch, Kedma. Like, I know you paid $25, but like, we could have done the IKEA thing, right? Now, fast forward, we've been married 21 years. I'm still in the Goodwill. And he's like, honey, we've passed, there isn't, if you want, I can take you to Macy's, right? But there's a part of me that's like, I like to get deals, I just took him for the first time on Spirit Airlines. I loved it. He's like, honey, you couldn't have paid for United Airlines? I'm like, no, I want you to experience this, right? So listen, I think part of it is the trauma we bring from culture, from lack of, from fear. I think it plays a role, and I think it plays a significant role in, how much of what we have in our life we actually manifested. We manifested it. How many times people go, well, the economy's terrible, and I'm not going to get any leads, and all of a sudden they don't get any leads. My team, we're always busy because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much abundance. There's so much opportunity. There's so many. So I don't know. I would love to hear your perspective, but I think some of that scarcity is coming from a very, very young age, impressed on us, and then transfers into adulthood, and then actually continues.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you're saying there. And so everyone knows, like, when we say trauma, it's not, there are cases when there's, severe trauma in which people would normally think about what that would be. But every adult, whether they realize it or not, has these traumas that get built up on their subconscious mind. Because up until the age of 7 years old, you're in a theta brainwave state, which means is you're highly programmable. And so a trauma could be, you were hungry and you couldn't get your mom's attention, and that got built up on your subconscious, and now you're living in this state of lack from that seemingly non-event. Now, from all the work that I've done and research and whatnot, that event there is the same. It wreaks the same havoc on your subconscious mind as a crazy significant event that could have happened.
Correct.
It's not different.
Because your brain doesn't know the difference.
The brain doesn't know the difference, and it occurs the same. And so that's what builds up in your subconscious mind. And so what you're saying is, you're choosing to go to, a Goodwill still, or you're choosing to do Spirit Airlines. The difference there from what I hear, is that you're choosing that. You're
I'm
not
choosing it.
reacting and saying, oh, I have to do this.
Correct.
Which is the big
Correct.
difference. And that's when you
Huge
know that you've healed that part of yourself so that you can actually make that choice on how to respond. And that's the difference.
Amen.
When if you have the trauma that's unhealed, a situation will occur, a conversation with a team member or something, and you react without thinking, that is the trauma living there. When you've healed that trauma, that situation will happen, and you have enough space in between there that then you can choose how to respond. And
Absolutely.
even if you want to choose to be angry, at least you're choosing to be angry. You're not subconsciously reacting to be angry. And I think that's like a really key difference on that aspect there. But going
Amen.
back into when have you seen that shift? When have you seen that shift from like that scarcity and the fear, like from like the small business owner perspective?
Yeah, I get it.
When do you generally is it a shift that occurs from your perspective and what you've seen? Is it they get to a certain result, which then makes them believe that, and then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? Or are they generally getting to this place of abundance and then it all starts to flow? What have you seen?
I think it becomes from doing the internal work.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. And part of it is, I'm, how can I say? So we all have variances of things we have to go through. I learned at a very young age, as we talk age 7, I just learned very quickly that I had no place for victimization.
Mm-hmm.
I could not. It was sort of an opportunity, as and a little bit about my real story is like, if I had placed any role in my mind of scarcity or victimization, I wouldn't be here today. Mm-hmm. So, at a very young age, I had to change my mindset, and I had to create an environment that I had the power, even at age 7, that I had the power to be my own hero, that nobody was coming to save me, that there wasn't going to be all these opportunities, that I had to create those opportunities for myself. And I think that impressed on me so much that, to this day, I appreciate things at such a small level. Like, I'll walk into a restaurant and say to my husband, wow, it's amazing. He's like, honey, we were here last week. I'm like, it's still amazing. Nothing's changed, And he says, Kedma, you have such a childlike view. Well, children, before they're impressed by adults, have this beautiful view of the world, mm-hmm. where there's no discrimination, right? Before they've been jaded, mm-hmm. and they just love life, and there's abundance. And it reminds me of my eldest son, Kalen, he's autistic, he's on the spectrum, but he mm-hmm. just made the state swim team, the state swim team for the state of Oregon. And so I met with his coach because he made the swim team from never knowing how to swim. 18 months later, he's now on the state swim team. So I said to his coach, how is that possible? How's that possible? He said, because Kalen's brain does not have any space in his mind that he questions whether he can do it or not. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, because when I'm working with Kalen and he comes there, I go, okay, Kalen, you did 30 of them. Now do 80. Kalen will do it. He doesn't question it. He doesn't backtalk. He doesn't diminish it. And he comes back and does it. And he goes, Kalen's brain doesn't understand that he could say he couldn't do it, but his brain doesn't have that. The coach tells him what to do, and he does it.
How much of that do you think was translated to him from just the byproduct of him being around you? Or did you were you intentional with like helping him train that to like, what I'm hearing is that Kalen doesn't have, like, he doesn't have the self-limiting beliefs that he doesn't have the self-limiting beliefs to try to keep you safe, right? Like that's all your ego tries to do is just keep you safe from the scary world, right?
Right.
So what are one or two things that you did when he was growing up that you think helped facilitated that? I'm selfishly asking because I have a 2-year-old now,
the first thing I say to all of my kids, I have 3 boys, is that whatever they want, they can design their life. Like they can design their life. And it just reminds me. So like Fallon, for example, I taught my kids at a very, very early age, what does it mean like the power of money, the use of money, and what does it mean to buy experiences or to own assets. And so when my son went at 7 years old, just my age when I was going through it, he went to the bank and he was depositing money, and the bank teller, I don't know, he deposited $50 or something. The bank teller said, "Oh, are you saving up for a game?" And my son Fallon goes, "A game? I'm saving up for a house." A bank teller's like, "I'm saving up for a house."
That's fantastic. That is so
like
cool.
He's like, what? He looked at her like, "What are you, crazy?
Yeah.
Why would I buy a game? It's about investment, babe. I need a house."
That's so good. It really sounds like, I mean,
So I think it's
a byproduct of like who you are is
maybe, yeah.
Right.
I mean, like I think about even something my other son, when he was about 8 years old, we go to coffee shops. And so we're in Selwood, Oregon. We have local coffee shops. And one of the local coffee shops closed. And I said, "Marin, now you tell me, why did that local coffee shop close?" And he's like, "Because Starbucks was across the street." I said, "That's right. And what do you know about Starbucks?" And he goes, "Starbucks has a lot of money and they can wait a long time." I said, "That's right. And what about that local shop?" He goes, "No, Mama, they don't have a lot of money." I said, "I know. It's so sad." Right? But it was his way of saying that he knew the power of Starbucks. And that Starbucks had basically, come into the local community. And it was just a beautiful way of him expressing, again, he understands competition and money. So I don't know. It's something that I'm a very logical mom. I'm not going to lie. And it just works in everything. Even then when we go grocery shopping. So let me just tell you on a secret, Jesse. If you ever come grocery shopping with me, you will be in the car. And as I'm driving, you're responsible for reviewing the receipts. You are the receipt director. And as the receipt director, you must tell me what percentage we saved. You must tell me what of the items we bought we could have saved and what was items that were worth buying. This is what we do every time we go food shopping.
That's incredible. Do you know what is such a constant theme in this conversation, and is just understanding and like how fanatical you are about details. Right? Because but it's all the little things that people are always waiting for that. Have you heard like I don't even know if this is coined or anything, but like the silver bullet fallacy?
Oh no, I don't know what that is.
Well, I'm just waiting for that. I feel like I'm so close, just that one thing that's really, that thing is going to be the thing that puts me over the line. I'm like, honestly, a lot of my 20s, I lived by that. I'm like, I'm so close. It's just that one thing that's got to land and everything is going to change. And I was like, wait a minute, that's just a complete fallacy. It's all these hundreds or thousands of golden rubies of the details that get added and compounded over enough period of time that all of a sudden you have that big thing that falls. But it's all these little details that you're talking about of reviewing the receipts for the grocery bill. I know that's a silly example, but that shows me how you run your business. I know a lot about how you run your business based on what you just told me about your grocery shopping experience, right?
Do you want to go to grocery shopping with me?
No, I want to invest in your business. But in speaking, going back to the conversation with the children and learning from them, one thing I like to say to a lot of clients, again, my son, he's 2, up until the point of your about 3 is when you start to develop your memories. That's also when your ego develops. That literally the best thing that you can do is when you're up until you're 3, it literally exists as just this big, beautiful ball of love. And our goal in this life is actually just to return to that. So you look at kids under 3, it's like they've already figured it out. Like they have
figured it out.
Right?
And and here's another thing I did with my kids, especially when they turned 4, for anyone with young kids. So I had a rule. We had a negotiation chair. So here's how it looked. Let's suppose my 4-year-old had a little argument and my husband said, I'm going to put him in timeout. And maybe my 4-year-old didn't agree with it. Well, they went into the hot chair. So first my 4-year-old would go, my husband would have to sit down, and my son would have to explain his position. Then My husband would go in the negotiation chair and he would have to explain his decision. And sometimes I ruled with my son.
Oh,
And
awesome.
so it was a really interesting piece. Now, how did this play into life? Fast forward, when my Fallon was in middle school, I got a phone call and his 8th grade teacher said, Mrs. O, we have a problem with your son, Fallon. I said, is everything okay? Is he safe? Yeah, he's safe. Is he at school? Yes, he's at school. Well, what's the problem? She said, well, every time I try to, suggest something different, your son negotiates with me. And I said, yeah, we teach him to negotiate. That is part of what we teach as a family. And she heard me and she goes, okay, well, that's all I really needed to know. Thank you, Mrs. O.
That's amazing. It's so interesting hearing. I love these perspectives on different, ways to raise children. Obviously, I'm in that period of life right now.
Yes.
And one thing, my son, this is about a month ago. He's 22 months, and we're trying to eat dinner or something, and so I took away his ball, and he decided to have a little bit of a meltdown. And he was on the ground crying, and I picked him up and I said, hey, buddy, can we just take a few deep breaths right now? And he's 22 months old. And so we went, and he took a few deep breaths, and I said, do you feel more calm now? And he goes, yes. And I was like, are you ready to have some food now? And he goes, yes.
Aww.
And it was such a fun example to just see of like, hey, just allowing him to have the space that he needs, and then give him tools to be able to calm down and for him to think clearly again. And I think that, that's one of the techniques that even in day to day, if talking about these traumas and everything, if you have a situation and it causes you to react, just having that ability to take a few deep breaths,
right,
to get yourself into the state of mind to then choose the response, I think is probably one of the most powerful things that you can ever deploy.
Yeah. And the truth is that, we think that people follow us because of a title we have. They don't. They follow us because of how we choose to lead. And I'll tell you, the quickest way I can verify someone's level of leadership is by what people say when they're not in the room. I used to be a turnaround consultant for the state of Oregon, and I was a team of 5. Our entire job was to go into companies that were literally in influx. We're talking potentially losing hundreds of employees, or labor law has come involved. Like, we're talking stuff that could really impact economic in the state. And inevitably I'd walk in and the head of the company would be like, well, let me tell you what's going on or whatever. And I go, you know what? I'm going to do a few focus groups with the employees and I'll get back to you. And I would find out in an hour where the problem was. And so that's another thing I've learned is that, it's so much of how we show up, and that emotional regulation you're referring to is going to feed into whether someone wants to be led by you. And you cannot force that. They either are, if they want to be led by you, they will do anything for you. This is why I tell people don't follow companies, they follow people.
Right.
People don't follow companies, they follow people. Right. And so when you leave, inevitably there's a statement, right? At the C-suite level, it is not a coincidence when a C-suite person leaves, all of a sudden people leave with them. Why? Because people follow leaders. So that emotional regulation you're talking about, huge conversations in the home service. And I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I don't think it's even close to understanding culture and leadership and, building people the right way. So anyway, it prompted that statement that when you said emotional regulation.
I'm curious your thoughts on this. Have you ever seen the quote that says, first time founders focus on product, second time founders focus on sales, and third time founders focus on team first?
I do. Well, and I'll tell you, I'm like a unicorn. I'm very careful what I expose, when I expose it, right? Like I'm like a ninja. But so I'm an accredited investor, right? So I'm an investor in 2 firms. One is TBD Angels, which is it's a consortium of about 150 of the top investors in the country that love to invest in really unique companies. And the second one is a program called Pipeline Angels for women investing in women. I will tell you, as an investor, I absolutely play a significant role in understanding the dynamics of the team, even more so than the product, because I have seen teams kill a company, even when the product was amazing. Right? So that team and how that team is structured and who's on that team, and does that team have a trajectory, a pattern that can show their success over and over again, they're going to have a much higher score to exactly what you're talking about.
So building on that, for bringing this conversation really full circle to owning a painting business, you've obviously done a ton of coaching in the home service. If we just focus on team, like what are one or two things that you've seen specifically in the home service, like in that realm, that people could implement today, right now, with their team that would make just a dramatic difference in their
So
life?
first thing I would say is this. There's a lot I could say, but let's start with the first one. Let's make the most obvious one. I'm a huge proponent on using scientific tools to make your life better. So I happen to use DISC. We use DISC in our companies, in my multiple companies, obviously within the painting industry, in the home service industry. And if you haven't used DISC, it's really four focus areas. D is like the decision makers of the world. They're like every single New Yorker you ever met. They're doers. They want to get things done. And they're always late for an important date. They're like the rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. Like, it's like, where are you going? I'm late. Well, wait a minute. It's Sunday. I'm still late. What do you want from me? Right. So those are your Ds. And they want things done fast. Basically, 90% of all the painting businesses I've ever met, the owners I've ever met, and any home service I've ever met, they're probably Ds. Like, if you're going to stay and be in grit and deal with a lot of like feast and famine, you're probably a D. The second one is your I. Those are your influencers, right? They sell ice to Eskimos, inspirational. They're your salespeople. Like, you meet them and they're charismatic. So I love I's. I put I's in sales roles all the time because it makes sense. Then you have your S's. They're very submissive, subservient. They're service driven. They like to be behind the scenes. Don't throw them on a podcast. They want stability, and they're all your customer service people that really make your life easier. Basically, all the virtual assistants we've ever met typically are a high S because that's the role they're playing. And the last one is your C's. They're calculated. They have high criticality. They're conscientious. Basically, if you've ever hung out with a C, you could come to them and say, man, look at this playbook. And they're like, nah, this sucks. You missed this, right? Like, all they're going to do is like look at all the things that could go wrong because they're like your CPAs of the world, right? That's their job. Now, why is it so important to get that assessment? I'm not saying it's 100%. I would tell you it's 90% because half the problems I see in the home service business has nothing to do with the skill set and everything to do with friction and how people are wired and how they show up. I'll give you a case in point. We hire technicians into our field. We need them to have a high C because they need technicality. They have to have attention to detail. And secondary, it could be a CS, meaning service driven, or even a CD because they get things done. My director of operation 6 months ago met this person, onboarded, and it was a technician. And I said, what was their DISC? They said, oh, they are an ID. I said, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. This is a technician job, and you put them in a role that would have been better in sales. They said, no, you don't know. It's going to be fine. Okay, fine. 7 days later, I kid you not, Jesse. Okay, I call, check in on the team. Hey, how's this person doing? They said, well, we were on a job, and we were running the upstairs, downstairs, and we couldn't find this person. I was like, well, what do you mean you couldn't find them? We went up, couldn't find them, went down, couldn't find them. We finally looked outside and we noticed they were feeding the chickens. I said, of course they were feeding the chickens. They're an ID. They shouldn't have done that. They are going to feed the chickens. And so what happened is I had a conversation with the owner. The owner had chickens. They said, can I go feed the chickens? And next thing I know, they're feeding the chickens. So my point is, get yourself a disc. Like when we onboard people on the virtual assistant side, we make sure that we do a disc for you and we do a disc for the VA because we want it to make sense. We want the culture to fit. So I would say that's the first thing. Second thing.
On that, before we move on that, because also love the disc as well, because I think it's gone to another level now of uploading them both into chat. And then
we do that. We upload it.
And saying how do we work together? What are the things to look out for? And everything. I think it's so good.
And we do a probability factor. So we do a probability of 90% that it is a perfect fit. Wow. And we do exactly that. We take your disc, we take their disc, we take their assessment, we take the interview, then we create that into AI, and we come back and we say, based on this is the true matchmaking percentage for success. And that is beautiful. Like that is magic, right?
Yeah.
It's like magic.
Okay. So first one is if you're going to have people on your team, match up personalities and understand how to actually work together.
Right. Now, what are you, Jesse? You are either a DI or an ID.
Yeah, I think I'm a DI.
You're a DI. Okay, perfect. Yeah, because that's perfect. 90% of the coaches we hire through House School Pro are DIs. Yeah. We don't have anybody who's an S. They'd be eaten alive.
Yeah.
Sorry. There's no leading S's. And I'm a DIC. I'm not a dick.
Yeah.
It's just sense. The way it's spelled is DIC.
That's fantastic.
Second.
We're gonna have to clip that one part without any context.
No, that's what it stands for. Yeah. It's DIC. I didn't make it up. That's what it says. Second is you have to inventory what your time is worth. So we have a sheet that we take people through called Elevate to Delegate. And that means we inventory. We look at where are you spending your time that's under $15 an hour, under 50, under 100, under 500, under and then 1,000. I kid you not. 60% of our customers that come through for inventory review, 60% of them have 80% of their time at the $15 a level. These are CEOs doing $15 tasks in their business, and they want to know why they have no time because they're control freaks. They're doing the sales estimate, they're doing the phone calls, they're doing the email review, they're doing the data entry. Oh, they're doing bookkeeping. You name it, they're doing it all. And they think they're being successful. They're just creating unnecessary busy work. That would be it.
What do you see? Okay, so I love that. So just to recap, so it's, again, match the personalities and then
match your personalities.
And then start to really think about what are the tasks that you're doing based on the hourly rate, and then delegate that out. What do you say to the owner right now that's listening to this and they're just so overwhelmed because they're working 60 to 80 hours? They get to the end of the day and they say, the most likely response of what'd you do today? And they say, I don't know, but a lot of it.
Yes.
And they just feel like they can't even rip the Band-Aid to offer those tasks because they don't even have capacity to think about that. How would you coach somebody around that? Or
what I would say is that in my mind, they're worth $1,000 an hour. There's no question in my mind, right? Yeah. That's where I am. And I'm not negating that they're doing hard work. I want to respect that. But what I want everyone to hear loud and clear is it's not that you can't do the work. I know you can. Like, I want to give everyone you get a sticker, you get a sticker, you get a sticker, you get an award, you all get an award for being a workaholic. We have now confirmed, Jesse, you get an award. We're all workaholics. Congratulations. Now that we've proven that, we need to realize I feel like I have to give them all.
No, I love that because that's, it goes back to our initial conversation of, like, that just stems from whatever traumas on your subconscious mind. You need to prove yourself to do this, where it's all just a made up story. Like it doesn't
it's all a made up story, and it's
makes sense, right?
Right. Yeah. So you bought yourself a job, you bought yourself a job, you bought yourself a job. Yeah. Everybody's bought themselves a job. Now, it's not how many hours you can put into the company. It's where you have to place as your genius power that only you can do better than no one else. So let me explain. When I started my cleaning company, and I could have done anything. I could have done painting. I could have done, because I have access to so many amazing people. I actually did not start with actually cleaning. Actually, I did one job, and then I had my director of operations. She walked in, she goes, who the heck did this job? We got to fire this maid. And I'm like, oh, that was me. She goes, I said, how'd I do? She goes, we're giving you a 2. I said, is that good? She goes, no, a 2 is for showing up. Okay. It's not good. We do not want you in this company doing the cleaning. Then I thought, okay, well, let me do estimates. So I went ahead and I did estimates. She said, who the heck is giving the company away? I'll go, oh, that's me. I said, how did I do? She goes, you still have a 2. I said, she's like, we're officially firing you from this department and the other department. Okay. So what I learned very quickly is my genius zone is in strategic partners, because I never outsource relationships. So guys, let me make it very clear. My relationship with Jesse is never going to be outsourced. Okay. Never. Like we're tied, threaded, connected. That's how it goes. Okay. I never outsource relationships, and I spend my time in strategic partnership and building the financial arm of the company. Mm-hmm. That time that I spend doing that is about 5% of my time in the company, which generates 75 to 80% of all of our revenue.
Wow. That's a big hourly rate.
Yes, it is. And I deserve it. Right? So for that hardworking person, because I was there. How do I know I was there? Because I will tell you, about 18 years ago, I think it was 18 years. We'll have to fact check. But whenever the book Tim Ferriss came out, so I have to look at whenever Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Workweek came out.
2008, I think. 2008.
2008. Okay, so how many years ago was that?
2008 or 2004, somewhere around there.
Was it 2004 or 2008? Now you're okay. Well, whenever Tim Ferriss's book came out, 4-Hour Workweek,
2007, neither.
Oh my gosh, 2007. Okay, so help me with the math. How many years ago was that?
That would be 18 years ago.
Yeah, so I called it 18 years ago. So 18 years ago, I was that one-person operation. I was stressed out. I was a mom. I had everything going on, and this book came out. Mm-hmm. Tim Ferriss, 4-Hour Workweek. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't read it, I took that book and I read it cover to cover. And then you know what else I did then? I read it again cover to cover. And then I did it a third time. And then I said, what if I take everything he's saying and I actually apply it to my life? Mm-hmm. And that was the moment that I hired my first virtual assistant. His name is Enoch, and he still works for me.
Wow.
Enoch lives in India. He runs my other company full time, and I have never met him in person. I don't know how he lasted with me because I'm so tough. But 18 years ago, when it was not bougie to have a virtual assistant, I began the VA space and changed my life, and I bought back my freedom. And now I literally travel twice a month. How
much did you change his life?
I changed his life forever.
Right.
Forever.
Yeah. How so?
Forever. Huh?
How so?
Well, first of all, he's never met a Kedma before. So we'll start with that. But I really brought him into what does it look like to, work with a high energy, no nonsense business owner, like a high D. I also invited him to play big. Like he managed, so just to tell you, so I have 2 kids who are disabled. Both are autistic, and I do a lot of my God work with my faith to give back to people with disabilities who are looking at self-employment. I have done that for over 20 years. I'm considered an expert in the disability space. I've worked with veterans who have PTSD. I've worked with people who are visually impaired, and I've worked with people who have developmental disabilities and other ones. And so I had a passion to help these businesses. And so I worked with multiple state agencies, but I only did the consulting, which really was maybe 2 hours, 3 hours of my time for a lot of these cases. But that consulting was critical, right, for the stages, but he handled all the back end. He handled all the feasibility. He handled all the research. He handled all the preparation for my review.
It's unreal.
It's unreal. So,
and then too, like I'm sure what he's made and the opportunities for him and his
oh
life
yeah,
and his family is probably dramatically.
he says that all
in
to
the
me.
past.
He says that to me all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Unreal.
All the time.
I feel like I have a million more questions, and this conversation can go on forever.
Do we have to go already?
I want to respect your time. We're
Oh my
60
goodness.
seconds out. I feel like we're just getting started, but
Well, I want to make sure. So I'll leave this with. So DISC for sure.
Yeah.
Managing your time, creating an org chart where you can buy back your time, and you want to think about what your time is worth, and can you transfer your time and use the currency exchange that we have here, which is very strong, to buy opportunities somewhere else that can give you faster, stronger, same quality or better to make your business grow. So, I mean, full disclosure, in my home service business, it is run by 2 full-time VAs, the front end of the business. The back end of the business, which is like the cleaning, the director of operations, all the US people that are on the ground doing it, they all handle that. But the front end, when people are coming in, they're trying to get the sales, they're trying to get into an estimate, they're responding to all our calls, it's all handled by them. Because again, one of the things that my VA does, okay, so what's the third thing I would say? They have to get into AI. They have to get into AI. All of my team members are AI certified. What I wanted to show them was a really cool bot we set up.
Okay.
But it is so much fun because we can talk to the bot and ask it questions. But one of the coolest thing is our bot is, we always hire people with disabilities. So our bot is very slow. So our bot is trained to say, look, I'm a slow processor, and I've been hired by Superb Maids because they support all abilities. Like, so we even play into the bot has its own personality.
Wow.
But I wanted to show you how the bot comes to life in a fun way that would make the audience see, wow, this is the kind of stuff that, people can do in your business to buy back your time, but get more business into your company.
That's amazing. We'll share the link on the podcast, but it's for people to check out your website there too. And in the next time we'll have the settings enabled.
We'll have to do show and tell.
I'm sure. I would love to have you back on if you're open to it. This has been super fun. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for your story, what you've done. I mean, consulting 30,000 plus businesses, the work that you're doing in the disability space, providing opportunities for people overseas that wouldn't have otherwise, building amazing companies. I know the specific impact you've had on several different companies that you've really built has just been tremendous. And honestly, I'm just honored to sit here and have this conversation with you. So thank you for everything.
Me too.
That you're doing.
What can I do to serve you, Jesse?
You already did just by being here. Did. So thank you for being here. This is like I said, this was an absolute privilege to have this conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to having you back on. So that's what you can do, is just come back on.
Yeah, I would love to. And also maybe the challenge for people listening is to reach out to Jesse and say, what are some of the pain points you're going through? Is it fear on the economy? Is it tariffs? Is it not knowing how to scale? Like, I think it would be fun for you and I to banter and just like play into how can we support people.
Yeah, we do have a segment called Brush Busters where it's usually a couple of coaches. So maybe we'll have you as a special guest.
Oh, that's fun.
We answer questions from the listeners from letters. So
that is fun.
So maybe we'll have you on a Brush Busters episode.
That would be fun. Yeah.
That's what we'll do for the next one.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks, Kedma. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.